What does it mean to have good genetics or bad genetics for bodybuilding? Is good genetics Phil Heath and bad genetics Nick Walker, or is it the other way around? In today's video, I'll discuss an interesting and surprisingly complex topic without any script or preparation. Everything here is spontaneous, and we're going to start by talking about genetics on a visual and physical level, and then we'll talk about genetics in other aspects where it also has a huge influence. On a visual level, can we say which bodybuilder has better genetics? I think we can. I'm going to give a very simple example so that everyone can understand. It's better to have broad shoulders and wide clavicles than to be narrow and have the rib cage of a chihuahua. It's better to look broad, and that helps you look big. It's better to have legs that are maybe not too long or too short, just a normal length. Bodybuilders with short legs look bad, but then those with very long legs and very short torsos also look strange. And on top of that, all of this is genetic and can't really be changed. You can disguise it, slightly hide the problem of lacking width by building up your shoulders and back. Then we have to talk about genetics when it comes to muscle insertions. For example, we see bodybuilders who have poor back insertions. This could be, for example, Wesley Bissers, Nathan Diasa, who have their back muscles inserted too high with a back that's too short, which gives the impression that they have less back because their muscle simply doesn't cover as much area. Then we have some cases of back muscles that do seem to insert at the hip. This can also happen with the biceps, for example. We have biceps that are very short, extremely short, and almost all of their size is tendon. It's fascia and not muscle itself. On the other hand, some biceps are too long and appear flat. The triceps issue seems even more exaggerated. We have some well-known examples like Rolly Winkler, whose triceps practically had no tendon, it was all muscle. And then there are unfortunate triceps like Andrea Presti's, which are all tendon. The same thing happens with the legs, especially the quadriceps. Some people have the outer head with a very short muscle belly, so it sticks out much more and gives a pumped look. Meanwhile, a long quadriceps usually looks flatter. Then we can talk about something that is also very genetic, which is muscle separation. The depth comes from the cuts. It helps give a more 3D and defined look. Muscles so separated, with such deep gaps between them, that you can fit your finger in there. It's crazy. And others, on the other hand, are completely flat and their muscles look like they're stuck together. There are also bodybuilders who, genetically, have more of another type of fiber, or more type 1 fibers, more type 2 fibers. It depends a lot on the person, and a different distribution can vary. It also leads to denser muscles, or muscles that look softer. Also, due to genetics, there are people who tend to store fat in a distributed way, others in a localized way, and others naturally tend to be leaner. You can see that physically and visually, genetics is super important. You can have a combination, of course. We have Coleman, 8 Olympias, who is practically perfect genetically in terms of structure and muscle, but he has a terrible midsection due to his abdominal insertion and a very poor shape of his abs. We have Phil Heath, 7 Olympias, one of the most perfect physiques that have ever existed in my opinion, but with a very big structural flaw, which is that narrow clavicle, that lack of width. Already because of his bone structure, in fact he weighed 110 to 115 kilograms, with this look of weighing 150, he had little density, a narrow skeleton. You can be perfect, but this is even at the bone level. There are bodybuilders with deformed or asymmetrical sternums, rib cages, or ribs that aren't pleasing to the eye, and this will always be a disadvantage for them. Being 2 meters tall isn't beneficial for bodybuilding, for basketball no doubt, but it's really hard to fill out such a long body. Whereas being around 1.6, 1.7, or 1.8 meters tall are the best heights for being a bodybuilder. If visually, aesthetically, in terms of muscle insertions, body proportions, structure, how your muscle bellies are, separation, all of that, you have normal, good, or excellent genetics, you can probably dedicate yourself to bodybuilding. With hard work and effort, you can stand out even if you're not perfect. If we think about genetics in terms of what is visual, as I already mentioned, bad, everything is perfect, we can think of not just anyone. As one of the clearest examples of someone who has fought, has challenged nature, and has come very far but can't go beyond where he has reached. None of this would exist if he hadn't overcompensated with the other factors we consider. Achieving these types of bodies takes unimaginable effort and work. But then there are some cases where there really is no solution, there's nothing to be done, and it's better not to even try to destroy your body and your health and suffer unnecessarily for something that just isn't meant for it, and that's it. I see amateur bodybuilders who join just for fun and aren't critical enough to realize they're not where they should be. But there's also something here that isn't visible. Not all structural genetics, physical genetics. Yes, almost everything to be a bodybuilder depends on that. But here's an important point. There are people who are born, well, with diabetes, with lactose intolerance, gluten intolerance, with hormonal disorders, with organs that don't function as well, or people who are born and already need a transplant, autoimmune diseases, even for example the case of Chris Bamstead, who has always been dealing with that serious problem. And this is also part of genetics. It's something you're born with, that for one reason or another you have to deal with. And even though we don't see it under our skin, under our muscles, there are very complex systems and a lot of parts working together, and any of them can fail, or some can be better or worse, just like muscles, which in the end are all organs. And yes, a muscle is an organ. Genetically, you can have a stronger or weaker heart. You can have a stomach capable of digesting anything. And then there are people who eat something fried and they're sick for a week. You can have an intestine, a pancreas, a gallbladder, better or worse, or a liver capable of metabolizing anything, or on the other hand, people who drink a little and already get sick. And this is very interesting, especially in competitive non-natural bodybuilding, which is the most famous, right? Where bodybuilders take pretty dangerous substances, not just testosterone. Some use trenbolone, clenbuterol, oxandrolone, growth hormone, insulin. And the ironic thing about all this is that when they have worse physique genetics, worse insertions, worse structure, whatever, they sometimes have to compensate with more substances. And therefore, they need to have better internal genetics, so to speak, that can handle all of that. Maybe Nick Walker has Mr. Olympia level organic genetics, capable of handling anything he takes, while another guy, who might have godlike muscles, could have a very delicate liver, a fragile heart, or a tendency to suffer heart attacks. Some bodybuilders experience this at a young age, like 30 or 40, while others, such as Beckles, lived until 90 or 95. Genetics plays a major role. It's much more complicated than it seems. And then there's also metabolism, a faster metabolism, a slower one, a body that's able to build more muscle mass or maintain it. We have extreme cases like my famous video about bodybuilder animals, where I showed some examples like the Belgian blue cow, even some dogs and cats that had a myostatin deficiency. I've said it in a very colloquial and general way, okay? Just to keep it simple. The body has myostatin, so we don't have an exaggerated muscle mass that could be counterproductive. But there are animals, and I think even people, who have a deficiency of this safety brake in the body to prevent uncontrolled growth. And their genetics, therefore, allow them to have and maintain an exaggerated amount of muscle mass, even without anabolic substances and without even training. Obviously, this cow doesn't work itself to death in the gym or take testosterone or insulin. If you look into the topic of psychopathy and some mental disorders, many experts raise the debate of whether you are born with it or if it is developed. And it may be neither one nor the other, but both. It is believed that there is a certain genetic predisposition to psychopathy. What I want to say with this is that an individual's psychology can also be influenced by genetics, not just by experiences, disorders, upbringing, and all that. And I don't want to discourage you. We're not some pre-established character that's been designed to be a certain way and can only be that way. It's not an inability to evolve. No, we can change, and we can change a lot. We can go against our genetics. We can improve in every aspect, but we are definitely very determined and conditioned by it. And in bodybuilding, like in any other, it's not a sport, okay? But like in any other sport, just so you understand me, genetics isn't everything, but it's one of the most important things. And when you combine privileged genetics in every aspect, or in most of them, with work, effort, discipline, and all the factors in your favor, we have bodybuilding monsters like Coleman, whom I've already mentioned, Phil Heath, Dorian Yates, Jay Cutler. So when you hear someone say, wow, this guy has great genetics, maybe that guy is going to have a heart attack at 30 and has a defective heart. Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, not many people know this, but he's had quite a few heart surgeries, and he himself has said that his family members have had them too. And he has a deformity in his heart valves, something like that. He has a genetic problem. There you see him, an Austrian giant, 1.90 meters tall with a sculpted physique, but he didn't have the best genetics for bodybuilding, because genetics isn't just about having biceps like balls or a pumped up chest. Here's an interesting question. In today's bodybuilding, who has the best and worst genetics? Not just physically, but in every way. Explain your reasoning and I'll read it. Others might too, which could be interesting. I'll be waiting in the comments. This is Aries YT Bodybuilding signing off. See you next video.